So, let's begin. How many of us love desserts? Can you grab that door for me? We love them. I want you to understand what a dessert is. What do we think a dessert is? Sugar, cake.
Sugar and fat.
Fat. And white flour. Love it. And you're right on all accounts except for the fat. Fat is not a dessert. Fat is where we store most of our nutrients. Isn't that weird? 150 years ago, 200 years ago, when people would go into a butcher and they would look for cuts of meat, they would look for the fattiest cuts of meat, but they would always be the most expensive. And so the poor people that couldn't afford much, they would buy the lean cuts and they would actually slice it, take bacon fat and put it on thread and thread it through the meat to try to get more nutrients. And yet what have we been led to believe in our society? Fat is bad. And yet, how many thousands of years now have we rendered fat and used it as lard, and yet we didn't have heart disease and all these other things?
Oh.
We didn't have that. But the one thing our society has done now is we have begun to eat more and more carbohydrates. What's a carbohydrate? Sugar. White flour. Potatoes. All the starches. Is corn now before you answer, I want you to consider, is corn a grain or is it a vegetable? It's a grain. If you want to fatten up an animal, what do you feed them? Corn. If you want to fatten up, what should you eat? Corn. Isn't that a bummer? I love corn chips. And so I have to actually look at corn chips now as a dessert or sugar.
Oh.
So 200 years ago, I would bet that none of us probably could have devoured an apple. It would have been nearly impossible. Because it was smaller, it was considered a crab apple, but it was loaded with a ton of vitamins, nutrients, minerals, and things of that nature. We couldn't even hardly get through one. That's why the old saying, keeps the doctor away. So when we start to understand that now all of our food is grown for sugar content and taste, now we've got apples that, oh my gosh, did you taste how sweet this apple is? And we power it down. But a medium-sized apple has 15 grams of carbs in it. That's a lot. So if there was one thing I would have you focus on, it would be removing carbohydrates from your diet, as if your life depends on it. And this is why. What gives us our power? Who has power? An 18-year-old or a 70-year-old?
18.
Why?
More energy.
Youthful.
More energy. Youthful. What makes them youthful?
Well, the not
Haven't
been
aged yet.
feeding themselves crap all for 50 years.
But they can. They're true. But they
Yeah.
can eat garbage and feel what?
Yeah, but
Still feel okay.
but
Their metabolism is running. What runs metabolism?
not sure. I don't know.
Krebs cycle.
What makes us grow old? We lose something. Good. I love it. So as our body does this, it peaks at 25. And at 25, they told us what? We were over the hill. And they make it sound like we're going down immediately. No way. You peak at 25 to 30, and you stay like this for 40, 50, even 60 years. You should feel at 70 or 80 like you did at 25. How many people do that? You do? Good. Some of us. But what keeps us potent? Not impotent. What keeps us potent? It's our what?
Testosterone.
Our testosterone or our hormones. That's what keeps us potent. How many of you would like to have higher hormone levels and feel wonderful? If you stop carbs, you will do that. Why? What do carbs do? Carbs are, what we said, were sugar. So when we eat carbs, what happens to our sugar in our blood? Spikes. Does our brain and our blood vessels want that? No. Have you ever eaten a lollipop? How does your tongue feel halfway through? raw. It's irritated. Guess what your blood vessels feel like with sugar in it? Same thing. That's why. So, when blood sugar spikes, we can't handle that. We know our blood vessels can't handle that. So what do we have to do? We have to bring it down. And what hormone does that?
Insulin.
Yes. And when it crashes, now we have blood sugar that we can't maintain, and so we have to do what with it?
Eat more sugar.
We have to eat more sugar. Our body will crave it. And so now we have this cycle. But when it crashes, there's another hormone that comes to the rescue. And that's the one we don't want in our body. Cortisol. Where does cortisol come from?
The liver.
It is a stress hormone.
The liver.
The body sees it as stress. It doesn't come from the liver, but it's made from one of our hormones that's near and dear to our heart. For men, it's your testosterone. For women, it's your progesterone. Progesterone is for progestation. It's what maintains pregnancy. When you're stressed out, do you want to be pregnant? Nope. So your body is in tune to say, hey, I'm going to take your progesterone, I'm going to convert it to cortisol, because you're stressed out, and you can't even handle having a kid right now. So it's natural for the body to do that. It's a great design. And when you're under stress, if there's no food in your environment and we're hunter-gatherers, can you afford to feed a child? No. So your progesterone's taken away from you, so you don't have kids. This is all the grand design of the body. It's really quite fascinating. So if you're eating sugar and crashing blood sugar and spiking it all the time, you're depleting yourself of your main hormone that makes you feel powerful.